His presence is not small in the room this morning. We're joined by the CAS in the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, Honorable David Osiany. Good morning and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning.
Wow, your
It's
hello
nice to be
is a
here.
song.
Yes. He can actually sing, by the
Oh,
way.
really?
Oh
Yes, he
my
can.
God.
You know, we're going to have to ask you to do that.
Oh, the national anthem is something I take so easily. We all could, so that's fine.
Well, that would mean that we'd have to stand up, and then, it's going to get a little bit confusing here. David Osiany, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to the hot seat,
Thank you.
where the conversations that we'll be having are actually about hot matters right now concerning this particular topic. So let's go at it, shall we?
All right.
Okay, so promoting industrialization through special economic zones.
Yes.
We've talked about it, special economic zones. We had a gentleman in the studio last week who says, look, this should be the push. We should be manufacturing. We should be industrializing.
Yeah.
We should be making sure that we are making money.
Good.
As Kenya, as countries on the continent, what is the ministry's approach to this from where you sit as the CAS?
I think the creation of the Special Economic Zones Authority in and of itself was a huge step towards establishing special economic zones in Kenya. So that then there is a coordinating framework for special economic zones, which are different from the export processing zones, even though both of them are attuned towards industrial parks and industrialization as an agenda of government. When the president said that he hoped to achieve the contribution of manufacturing into GDP to be about 15%, I think it seemed as though he aimed too high, but I think he was real. We've achieved an 11% contribution into GDP. Remembering, though, that COVID was here with us, and so we lost 2 years of industrialization. The creation of the Special Economic Zones Authority has achieved quite some significant work. We currently have 16 special economic zones in Kenya, all right, fully registered, out of which 5 are public special economic zones. The rest being private, which means as an investor, you could set up somewhere or purchase a parcel of land and say, this is what I want to do on this parcel of land, and I want it to be demarcated and licensed as a special economic zone. The approach then by government to create an enabling environment, which is of course boosted by the fact that we are a liberalized economy. Capital markets authority is open to the international market. And so it's easy for, we even allow repatriation of resources by our investors in the country. All these things combined have created an enabling environment for the special economic zones to fester. And I think that, for me, is a very big thing.
Maybe we can take a couple of steps back, David. When we say special economic zone, tell us exactly what we are talking about here.
It would be easy to draw the parallels between a special economic zone and an export processing zone.
Yes.
Because both of them are industrial parks. So a special economic zone is envisaged to be a zone, like it's like a township. It mingles with community and creates a mini city where all these other factors are at play. An industrial park, but with other things. So when you go, for example, to our special economic zone known as the Konza City, Technopolis, that's a special economic zone. It will be having, your technology companies setting up our Silicon Savannah, but it will also have hotels. It will have all these amenities, a hospital here and there. The two are zones where the normal regimes of tax, customs, and everything are not really at play. Okay, so they are set aside. So you have a special economic zone then taking the township kind of look. An export processing zone is straight jacket industrial park. You go in there, it's manufacturing, and you get out. Even getting a fuel station may be a challenge. You go in, you find companies and sheds where people manufacture. Now, that is structurally how they're built. However, in terms of the soft, policy and what really makes them different is that an export processing zone 80% of your total product is for export outside the local market. The local market being East Africa community.
Okay.
So you only have 20% to dispose or to sell to Kenya and the other countries of EAC, DRC, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. But when you go to SEZ, you're not limited. You can sell locally, you can sell internationally. Nothing stops you from doing that. Secondly, it's about the way we incentivize the two zones. So because in a special economic zone, you're likely to accrue your profits almost immediately. We do not have a tax holiday for special economic zone investors, but we have a 10-year tax holiday for export processing zone investors.
So what do we have for special economic zone investors that's supposed to be an incentive for them?
The incentive we have for special economic zone investors is that, for example, they can hire 20% of their expatriate from the countries they have come from.
Okay.
Is that they operate outside the normal, they are not levied. No county levies or taxes apply in the special economic zones. So it doesn't matter. So once you're in a special economic zone, Nairobi County Council cannot come and say, this is our tax paid. It doesn't work for
Kenya
them.
Revenue Authority?
Kenya Revenue Authority has their customs levied, but they're very varied. All right. So you will look at, for example, when you import your equipment into a special economic zone, you import them custom free. So KRA doesn't charge you at the port of entry for equipment designated for the special economic zone.
Could you give us examples of special economic zones around the world that have spurred the sort of development that we envisage for our idea of the special economic zones?
Jebel Ali in Dubai is a special economic zone. It's what revolutionized what Dubai is. When they created Jebel Ali, they tried to attract investors. Come into our country. You can repackage from this place. You can do whatever you are doing from this place. The tax regime in the country will not apply inside here. We will give you power at a cheaper cost. For example, if you go to our Naivasha special economic zone, the cost of power is about 5 cents per kilowatt hour, as opposed to 18 or 17 shillings nationwide. And even in EPZ, it's just 15 shillings.
Right.
All right. So those various incentives. Jebel Ali is one of the most reputed special economic zones that spurred the growth. And remember, the whole of Singapore is now a special economic zone. Started as a small special economic zone, expanding. And they said, why don't we make the whole country operate under these laws and attract, therefore, investors and investment from around Singapore?
So why doesn't Kenya do that?
We are doing it. We are just probably not getting the results as fast as we would hope for, but
Maybe
I think we are now
precursor,
there.
or maybe a precursor to that question, David, then would be, what model then is Kenya currently using under the auspices of your office? What model is being used, and who then is being invited to operate within these zones? Whether we're talking about special economic zones, whether we're talking about export processing zones, who's being invited? Kenyans doing business in Kenya, external parties coming in and setting up business here. Who's being asked to do this?
That's a brilliant question. Listen, one of the biggest challenges we've had is that Kenyans think they cannot invest in these zones. And we are speaking to our investors. I remember leading a team of, the who is who, the Kenyan big boys, when we went to seek forays in Egypt. And none of them even knew about a special economic zone. One of them was setting up a multi-million avocado processing plant to his factory somewhere in central Kenya. And when I told him, why don't you do this as a special economic zone? Why don't you apply to be licensed as a special economic zone? In which case, then you will enjoy, even bringing in your equipment for free. You will enjoy different tax regimes. You will enjoy lower rates of power, considerably lower rates of power. He said, what do you mean? Are you serious? I said, yes. I understand there has been a disconnect in terms of communicating that agenda. One of the roles I took up when I joined the ministry was to try and speak about what the ministry has and does. So yes, we have the Kenya Investment Authority. That's our lead promotion agency that gets out there and speaks to investors and say, hey, listen, we have a dedicated economic zone in Naivasha for textile manufacturing. We are requesting you to come in and set base in our special economic zone there, or entice them to come to our export processing zone in Kitengela at the river. That is their job. But even locally, we are telling our investors, the people who have invested in various sectors, that we want to create an economy that's robust and create it with Kenyans. All right? So we have seen, for example, Tatu City is a special economic zone. Not many people know that. But Tatu City is a special economic zone. So when you see Bidco has set up its multi-billion plant in Tatu City, they know that it works for them for this market and beyond.
How easy then it is, because one of the biggest complaints of business people has been that the government has not made it easy to do business. I mean, and this could have been historical. This could have been a while ago. So the question is, how have things changed or made it easier to operate and do business commercially in this country as a Kenyan to say, all right, so let's take on the government on this. And take on, I mean, let's take up this offer that's being made. How easy it is then, because we're talking about a lot of things. We're talking about licensing. We're talking about, as you say, bringing in equipment, taxes, etc., etc. Or are we saying that here you have a carte blanche to operate as you will because we set up the zone, and if you apply, you get through, it's automatic, snap of the fingers kind of thing?
In 2014, Kenya ranked 138th in the world ease of doing business index.
Terrible.
2 years ago, we ranked 56th. It shows you how we have made remarkable
Let's
steps.
start again. Which year were we? 100 and something?
2014.
Okay.
All right. So those 7 years of improving ease of doing business, and we are third in Africa. So
After who and who and who?
after
again?
Mauritius and Rwanda. Yes. We are doing better than Nigeria. We are doing better than South Africa. We are doing better than Ethiopia.
It's okay. I yeah.
Nigerian by birth, but Kenyan by choice. Choose your choice. All right? So we are third in Africa after Mauritius and Rwanda. That only shows you that there's a bit of work going in onto ease of doing business. Of course, when you create e-citizen platform and business registration is, easier done online than having to queue at the state law office, and it makes doing business much easier. However, we also admit that there have been challenges, for example, with cross-county licensing. So you register a company in County A, but when you cross over from Kiambu with a vehicle that's branded, that has paid its levies, you pay cess.
Again, yes.
But that's not, it's for the counties to have a conversation with themselves and say, are we becoming barriers to business and trade, or are we promoting business and trade? The Ministry of Devolution, I am aware, even though that's outside my purview, maybe I shouldn't comment about it, has tried to have conversations with them. We have, as a ministry, tried to tell them, listen, create regional blocks at the very least. So that's why you have like region economic block, you have central economic block, you have coast economic block. But even creating these blocks and agreeing in between themselves is a challenge.
But so then the monstrosity that government is, right? Looking at the different departments that operate within ministry.
Yeah.
Put that aside.
Yeah.
And we've looked at countries. You've given the example of Singapore.
Yeah.
We look at China, who decided, hold on a minute, 30 million people in poverty. This cannot happen. Let's set this thing up and let's do it. Let's make money inside the country first, and then the surplus we will start to sell outside.
Yeah.
But let us manufacture, let's industrialize for ourselves. The Industrial Revolution took place. People started to put machines up and say, let's put these things, light bulbs, vehicles, etc., etc. But they decided to do that within the boundaries of their countries.
Yes.
They made it easier and said, it is the people who operate within this country who are going to drive this thing. We're not going to bring in somebody from outside to set up for us here. It's going to be done here. So then, coming back now to this thing that we put aside, if I can introduce a new word, the bigness that is government then cannot be allowed to work in silos if what we're trying to do is industrialize.
You're absolutely right. The challenge then we have is our devolution system, just like the federal states in Nigeria, where a state or a county as we know it in Kenya has its governor, has its laws, and
Yes.
you have to appreciate that some of these functions were devolved. Trade, for example, was devolved. So previously, government ran what used to be markets to try and dignify our business people and give them responsible, good-looking sheds from where they could do business. That now lies within the purview of the county government. And government cannot do much about it. All right? We cannot decide to now take back what we have devolved. Healthcare is a devolved function. The hospitals that are under government are level 6 and 7 hospitals. You're talking Kenyatta, Moi Referral,
Yeah.
Jomo Kenyatta University Hospital, Nyeri, one that was adopted under Kenyatta National Hospital. And so if the county is not going to be working towards that, we have a challenge. So if we have a devolved system that has devolved functions around trade and industrialization primarily, and there are points and places beyond which we cannot go, and we cannot determine as national government, but speak to county governments to be able to understand, then we have a challenge. And 12 years of growing what is now known as devolution, well, I would say 12 years is too few, but then we don't have time to be able to then say later that we have 50 years, we will improve it. Different models have worked separately in different areas. And this is why I implore every Kenyan going into an election to get leaders who can afford or understand what their mandate is. If you get a county governor and a member of county assembly who understands the monstrosity of industrialization and that they have a duty just as has the national government, then they will try and work seamlessly with national government for guidance and implementation of industrialization policies.
Are we saying, therefore, that understanding here has to be demonstrated by the activities that follow it? Because we've had this discussion in the studio about, for instance, our parliament,
Yeah,
and it's by far the most educated parliament we've ever had.
yeah,
The professionals within it,
top notch.
yet the decision-making process that we witness is dismal.
Yeah,
Things that ought to represent the very functions that they were elected to actually perform fall by the wayside. If you look at governors, very many of our governors, in terms of academic qualifications, sterling. But in terms of their ability, yes. So it is not that, in my mind, that people don't elect leaders. It's not that they don't elect people even with the track records, they do. Somehow the lure of the profits that one can accrue through plundering and pilfering seems to overtake all these things, because stories are told of people who, before they got into political positions, were one person. They get there, they become another person. Same with government. So I think the issue, if I may, is how do you elect a leadership who respect and adhere to the rule of law?
This is a topic I'm passionate about.
Yes.
The topic around fixing our software. Software is not our academic credentials.
No, it is not.
Software is the person, our values. Yesterday I was speaking in a graduation for one of the schools in Nairobi, and I said to them, listen, you guys are walking out of school into a world bereft of the real essence of humanity, bereft of honor, humility, honesty, diligence. A world bereft of kindness and courtesy. That's our software. The software re-engineering is going to happen on the floors of our houses, and I'm sad to say that its fruits may only be born properly in 20 years, because we have been the nation where schools were burnt by teachers and students alike, because Magoha and Matiang'i were saying you can't steal exams anymore. That's a software problem. I know that the voters are going to take a chance and risk it all, but you see, the voters also must understand, yes, maybe someone comes to office and they have a track record. Accountability frameworks So you have an MCA who is elected to hold a governor to account, or a member of parliament elected to hold the president to account. And as you say, sadly, they look at their accruals. What am I going to be able to make? And it becomes very sad. However, the voters must do the best they can at the ballot. Let's have the conversations then around, we tried, we thought this is who he was.
Actually, David, don't you think that there's a misnomer there? Because the discussion is about what voters should do at the ballot. It's more what they should do after the ballot.
I agree. I totally agree. Both at and beyond the ballot.
The software question, I think, is an extremely important one. And we're going to take a break now and then come back and discuss that, because this question, whether commercialization, industrialization, all of these things can happen, the nitty-gritty of it is then how can you ensure that the folks who've been put in those positions are actually going to get the job done, and what is going to guarantee that?
Very important.
So we're going to look at some of those things as we come back. David Osiany in the studio with us this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We're joined by Honorable David Osiany this morning, who's the CAS Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, having a hot conversation this morning, a difficult one to have, because we started off, talking about, look, this is what needs to happen, this is what is happening, this, etc., etc. But the crux of the matter is what CT raised as we went towards the break, and a lot of stuff has been politicized. Corruption and graft is at the heart of many of these issues, because we can sit here and talk until the cows come home. But if the fundamental issue is not sorted out, we're joking.
We've normalized it, indeed. In the past, it was considered that if you did something that was not in accordance with the law, it was criminal. It now seems that if you don't do the criminal, if you don't engage yourself in criminal activity, it is you who is the criminal. This thing has been inversed completely. And if you think it is a problem at the national government, try the county system and see. Try the county system. You will be shocked. When I say normalized, I mean they will not pretend. You will be told, you want this done, this is what it costs. There is what it costs as in the books that you pay to the county, and there's what you give the individuals who are involved and who are paid to do this very thing.
And we have quite a number of individuals, David, and maybe you can, lean in on that. We have quite a number of individuals who quit their office, and at some point you wanted to as well, to go into the political space. And unfortunately, the mindset is that a lot of people will quit public office or state office to run for politics so that we can perpetuate the same thing that we're talking about now, so that individuals can sit at the helm of graft and make sure that more money is trickling into their pocket as opposed to getting the job done. Why did you decide not to run?
The problem we have is it's on all sides, east, west, north, south. There's a problem at below, down there, up here. There's a problem. Structurally, we have a problem. I spoke about our software. We have a problem. I am an Afro-optimist. I believe that Africa can do better. But that belief only becomes sensible when we first admit that there is a challenge and that it needs fixing, and that it will be fixed by those of us who decide that we're going to be the few good and, few good men and women of society to do our honest parts. All right? In a country and a world, I dare say, where the right seems wrong and the wrong seems so right, it is normal. Someone has to do something, and we cannot just complain about it. I admit, because I have seen it in government, I have experienced it at the county level firsthand. I have seen the tragedy of graft. And you even go to the electorate and you're running for office, and they say, how can you run for office in that tiny house of yours? Then the imagination is you must have a lot of money and a big car to be able to run for office. Sometimes out of poverty, they could justify it and say, no, you are poor like us. I think that's what happens in their minds, which is faulty. You're poor like us. You need to have something of your own so that you don't steal from us. Yet I have seen, there's sufficient evidence that the wealthy steal even larger. And so
the wealthy steal more.
Because they have this bottomless, insatiable desire for for resources, they're used to the big money. So if you're used used to 1 billion shillings, and you don't have it in the account, you have a few 200 million Kenya shillings, you really will try and plug in to seek where the 800 is going to come from. I don't know. But the truth, we have to have these conversations on the floor of our houses.
Absolutely. So
It
what
will
do you
start
think about
with
your
the
former...
mother in the village who does not, you see an African mother, the son, 22-year-old, shows up with a G-Wagon Mercedes. We all know that car is 200 million US dollars. Okay? And the mother will not ask, my son, where did you get the vehicle from? She'll say, Chineke, God in heaven, you
See
have
God.
blessed me, oh.
See God.
See God. All right? My father, I remember I bought my first car at 21. I have said this before. But when I went to my father in his hospital bed to tell him I had bought a vehicle, and I wanted him to pray for my car, he stepped out. Before he stepped out of the bed, he asked me, where did you get the money from?
Yes.
You're 21. You don't come from a privileged background. Where did you get the money from? And I had to start explaining, Dad, we had this gig. So fast, I'm working on radio. I'm a presenter at Hot 96. It's paying peanuts, but I get gigs to do voiceovers. And one of the biggest voiceover I did was the Africa Cup of Nature. The World Cup was going round, and I was
So they
voicing
paid
it
me
for
some good-
Coca-Cola. And they paid me decently. Of course, out of my foolishness, when I was paid 450,000, I went to buy a car, not knowing how I would fuel it thereafter. All right? I just wanted to feel I'd bought a car. But those are the conversations we must have on the floors of our houses and hold each other to account. When there is a life change, ask the tough questions to your partner. Don't just say, I'm here to chop the money. Ask Mr. Boyfriend, sir, or
Where
Mr.
is-
Girlfriend, darling,
Where is this from?
this is amazing. We are going to the Maldives and I love it. And I'm going to take pictures in the first class cabin and it's amazing. But care to tell me before I am pinned down where this is from? Because unless we fix that, all these imagined brilliant ideas we have, Vision 2030, the MTP, Agenda 63 for Africa, whatever it is, people without honor will not implement them. The person who decides to take away $5 million, which is 500 million Kenya shillings,
Which happens often.
forgets that those are 100 dispensaries built and furnished across this country.
David, you had quite a number of colleagues who jumped the ship
Yes.
and decided to run for office,
Yes.
where you're saying a lot of these things are going on. What do
Yeah.
you think about that? At some point, you wanted to as well.
I am persuaded that we cannot now forget and drop and leave our hallowed chambers of parliament to wolves. I think there has to be good people who run for office and pursue them. I am praying that those who have decided to run for office are running for the right reasons. It's not for acquisition and accumulation, rather for the sole desire to transform livelihoods. Even if that parliament of 349 people had only 100 honorable people, that would be a big push. 100 who wake up every morning, who understand it's their mandate to improve the livelihoods of Kenyans as a community, not of their villagers only. 100 who are committed to show up in parliament to legislate. 100 who wake up each and every morning and show up and look and examine every bill that comes to the floor of that house with open-mindedness and with a patriotic focus. That would change this. So I congratulate those who've gone. I don't know what's been their drive. I know that one day, in one way or form, I'm going to be in the political space. That I can guarantee you. When, I don't know. But when I get there, I pray and hope that I will be able not only...
Having is important.
Yeah.
The ministry that you work in,
Yes.
given their mandate and what it is that they're able to do in helping transform the country,
Yeah.
it's profound. But if the people who hold office vie for political positions
Yeah.
end up in positions of authority, use the word software, good. I would venture that the hardware has also been disturbed because you suddenly, the rubric, the very foundation of it
Yeah.
seems to be faulty. So yes, what we hear from people who seek office is what they say.
Exactly.
Some have a track record that supports the things they say. But You said we have 17 economic zones.
16.
16.
Yeah.
I'm being prophetic here. Now,
Good. God bless.
now, you've also said that it is something you can apply for, depending on what it is you want to do.
Yes.
I'm thinking of a situation where we had economic zones literally in every county in this country. Because I previously thought, previously was many years ago, that you needed to be near the sea or near the mountains. But I realized you don't.
No, you don't.
You don't. Now,
You don't.
the amount of revenue that we'd be able to generate would be profound. So now, just as a point of departure, those who feel that they must steal and in a position of authority, don't they realize that if you go along this path, there'll be more to steal?
Yes, assuming
Yeah.
that the
Well,
drive
I
is
think
there.
what CT means is that there will be more to go round.
Well, I
Yes?
was addressing a specific group of people.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, even as you steal a lot, there'll be some still remaining for your people. But if you take the very seed money, because this is what many of our leaders do,
Yeah.
then essentially there can be no forward movement.
I agree. I agree.
But back to the question I wanted to ask. You said you are an Afro pessimist.
Optimal.
Oh, sorry.
That was deliberate.
It was no Freudian slip.
City is a master of sarcasm.
Now, as you look forward and you look ahead,
Yeah.
do you see a situation in this country where we'll be able to talk about the rule of law being preeminent and people who are elected are the first respecters of the law and adherents to the law? Do you see such a situation?
You know, Lee Kuan Yew, in transforming the wonderful Singapore, the first task he had was to hold to account his cabinet. And he looked at them in the eye and said, listen, guys, it starts with you. If I'm going to show an example down there, if people are going to know that...
We're serious about what you're saying.
that there is pain and there is punishment for graft and for not doing your job, they're going to see it with you. Sheikh, the ruler of Dubai, appoints his cabinet, and when he appoints them, he shows them to the world. He parades them and says, this is what your job is, and this is the time frame you have for it. I'll be back here with you in 48 months or in 24 months to hold you to account in front of this same audience. And he fires them in front of that same audience that cheered as he appointed them. I think the rule of law is foundationally going to be our cornerstone of progress, the rule of law. And where it is not honored, where it is not respected, where it is not cherished, however much we do, if the rule of law does not exist, tomorrow you're going to see guardrails that are protecting the expressway being cutted off. Because the rule of law, people are not patriotic enough to know that these laws are there for us.
Actually, take it as a given that it will happen.
I really pray not, because sometimes I think we need extremes.
It will happen because if you traverse, once upon a time I traversed these highways by the nature of my work, and they'd put these lovely guardrails.
Yeah.
No accident has occurred.
Yeah.
You pass by a month or so later, it's gone, and you can see this thing. Somebody methodically came and now, if you look at the way they put it up, man, it's a tedious process.
Yes.
It's really labor intensive.
Yes.
And it's difficult to remove it, but people will remove it.
And you know why it happens? Because they can almost guarantee they'll get away with it.
Yes, and they also know where to take it.
And part of that is the reason I'm glad when the president had this moratorium on scrap metal. And we as a ministry have been charged with the job of ensuring that guys who are applying for license must show us where they trade, with whom they trade, how they have traded over years, and account for the monies they have made trading for the previous many years. I mean, I have phone calls coming from people who are even known to me. Waziri, help us. We need this license. I said, I'm going to help you. I am more than glad to help you. Have you applied online? Yes. You're going to face our multi-agency panel. which has from the intelligence agency to CID to KRA, everybody, so that we are able to get to the root of what really is ailing our country. If people go to the SGR, Standard Gauge Railway, and cut off bits of it, and for a day it's stalled, what madness is that? So the challenges abound, but I think solutions are with us. Those of us who are in different spaces, not only those of us, in government or civil service or public service officers, it's in conversations like this that hold to account. I've watched this conversation holding leaders to account and telling them when they quoted things that didn't work. I will not mention names, but it starts here. It starts in the priests and pastors in the churches who will say, listen, we respect you, but we are not going to be blurred by politics so as not to ask the important questions. And the imams. It starts with the university students who are not looking at themselves as the hope of the country just because they don't have a few shillings later. And every time when people say, oh, young, we are youth, I say, age is transient. I am glad, I thank God, and the president honored me as a youth to serve as minister, but that's not the card I flash, because I've been in this country that had Joe Mishuki as an old man, an implementer par excellence, and I've been in this same country where we've had parliamentarian young people, juvenile, who are not attuned to, whose hearts are not in the right place.
David, even as you talk about these things, and look, the goal, where we are going, some things need to be done. And from what you're saying, the rot has eaten well into, it has permeated every place that you can possibly imagine. And at the same time, we're saying the work still needs to be done. We have individuals who are sitting in positions and are essentially not doing their job. You said you don't know. Some of your colleagues left those positions and went to run for politics. You don't know what the intention was. But more often than not, the speculation on the other side of the pond is that people are going to look for an opportunity where they can eat a little bit more of this that CT's talking about. Yeah. What must happen? Oftentimes, the baton is passed on to the voting public. Now choose you this day whom shall serve you, kind of thing. What is it that's supposed to happen now from somebody who's from the inside looking out? Really? There are people who are supposed to do their job and don't do it, David. There are people who are supposed to make sure some of these things are happening and don't do it. Politics comes in and plays a role sometimes that we're not even aware about the size or the magnitude of it. What ought to happen?
The leadership of President Kenyatta, I think, has been very good for the manufacturing and SME sector. It's the first time as a country that in my ministry we have created the micro and small enterprise policy that even defines what a micro and small enterprise is. There has been no definition of such kind in this country until that policy was put in place. You have, various authorities. You have the Kenya Industrial Estates charged with ensuring that they have shades where people can manufacture from and give you resources to do that. You have the Kenya Industrial Research Development Institute. People hardly know about it, but Kirdi is home to, we have equipped it with multi-billion equipment so that people can go manufacture what they can with the guidance of technical teams. If you want to do honey, you walk into a Kirdi place in South Sea, they will tell you this is how we walk you towards doing your honey, purified honey to the end. The Micro Small Enterprise Authority has been trying to work with counties to build sheds for SMEs. There has been a lot that has gone in from Kenya Investment Authority, Export Processing Zone Authority, all these things. In terms of policies, Kenya has more than enough policies to get us going. But
so
the
it's
implementation
the people who are sitting behind
absolutely
the policy that are the problem.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not about the CEO. It's about the technical person who understands that this is his job to do. The president can ensure these policies are made. The minister, as the policy prefect and the policy maker, can ensure, as we have, that all these policies are made to create a conducive environment. You can have a CEO, for example, at EPZ, but who is being sabotaged by an officer below him because the officer think they can reach high places and are not able to be touched. It's about everybody doing their job. And sometimes I actually really just think that people must know that there is punishment for not doing what you need to do. There are times I have even thought that civil service should entirely be contracted, not permanent and pensionable.
Because
Sometimes that's what people think. I cannot be moved. I'll just be taken to another department. My salary will keep coming, and it's work to fire. And then that's even risky to say, but I have to say it. Sometimes
it's a good thought.
Yeah, it has its risks, but you have to have an accountability framework. There has to be something beyond being taken to sell, because how do you punish someone for not doing his job?
But David, the thing is, I'm going back to the earlier statement of the rule of law. The vast majority of people in this country want to be law-abiding.
I agree.
They actually want to do the right thing. But in the absence of consistent, persistent examples set from the very top, that example gives you a safety net and a feeling of security. If security is in going with the tide, people will go with the tide. If swimming against the tide portends much harm, you will shy away from it. And that is why our scheme for whistleblowing doesn't really bear much fruit, because whistleblowers really have an extremely hard time.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
So if that's why I'm going back to what I said earlier on. The rule of law and people who are willing to put their foot first, and people who are willing to live by examples of being the first people to live by the rule of the law.
Yeah, but I think there's also need to celebrate those who have been able to do that. Long-standing civil servants have been into government. I tell you, there are women and men of honor in public service who do their job with diligence and not even celebrated enough. There are parliamentarians in this country. I can say here very comfortably, you go to Bondo, Simeon Ochanda, who's the MP there. I come from Rongo. I don't come from Bondo. But that's the first guy to create sustainable income for his schools in the constituency by creating fish cages for them and feeding 120 school pupils a meal a day without the CDF. He just put seed money with the CDF. Each school owned its cages, and now each school has several other cages.
Which means the schools have an income generating project.
Exactly.
Ochanda is exceptional.
Yes. So when we celebrate people like that it's beyond, and he's not the guy on TV every day.
No, in fact, if you don't know him, you don't know him.
You wouldn't know.
So when we have examples like that, let's celebrate them. Let's reach out for public servants who have done their deed, who've been on the stage and have been exceptional without graft, without a thing, and whose impact has been felt. And say, listen, I think you need to be celebrated. That way, then we create examples for the generations coming behind.
Who are following to
you tell
see.
them, when you're looking for a leader, when you're looking for someone to take after, please take after Ndu.
David, thank you for joining us. I mean, many things that we heard this morning, starting off an industrialization conversation and looking at where it went, but this really is the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
David Osiany is the CAS Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. Hope to see you again soon.